Welcome, everybody. I am delighted to be connecting with everyone virtually again. Today, we will discuss global post-COVID-19 scenarios for US, EU, and Turkey with great experts. Before we begin, I would like to make a few quick points on how the virtual event will run and how you, as the audience, can interact with the panel. We also would like to invite you to engage with us on Twitter through our handle at AC_Istanbul. And using the hashtag ACTurkey as seen in the chat box. At the end of the panel, we will take questions from the audience. Please type your questions in the chat box starting now. For those who are not familiar, you can find the chat box function below your Zoom screens. Please do not forget to include your name, title, and affiliation when writing your questions. Unfortunately, anonymous questions will not be addressed. After our few housekeeping announcements, we can start now. Thank you for your patience. The coronavirus pandemic has affected everybody's lives and will continue to change the world. We just don't know how yet. Once the immediate threat and crisis passes, what sort of world shall we inhabit? An historic mutually shared challenge has the power to engender the cooperation, but it also has the potential to deepen divisions and suspicions while boosting national self-interests. Which scenario will affect the shape of the global system, great power competition, the global economy, and more for decades to come? And how will Turkey be affected from all those? I am delighted to be joined today by our distinguished panelists at a distinguished panel featuring former member of the EU Parliament, Anna Maria Corazza-Bildt.
Hi.
Welcome, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you, Daphne.
Director of the Foresight, Strategy and Risks Initiative at the Atlantic Council Scowcroft Center, Dr. Matthew Barrows. Welcome, Matt. And my co-moderator today, my dear friend, Albright Group Senior Advisor, Mr. Hakan Akbaş. Hakan, welcome.
Thank you, Daphne, and let me reciprocate and also introduce my partner in crime today, Daphne, who heads up Atlantic Council in Turkey.
Thank you so much. I strongly encourage you all to start typing your questions in chat box now while watching, and do not wait till the end, please. Anyway, without further delay, I am pleased to pass the floor to my colleague, Dr. Matt Barrows, for his presentation on post-COVID-19 scenarios and how the global system will emerge and change under each three scenarios. Matt, floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Daphne. I'm going to now switch to this share the screen on my presentation and walk you through basically how I see possible futures. None of us can really know. Let's see if I can get this to, trying to see if I can make this.
Dr. Burrows, if you hit F5, that should take you full screen.
Okay, there we go. So we're in a crisis, and actually there's a couple crises going on. I'm going to talk about the drivers that I see out there that are going to cause us to go in one of three broad directions. The picture here is basically of the Spanish flu hitting New York in 1918, and scenes that are not that different actually in a lot of ways from what we're seeing today. So, you know, we've had pandemics throughout history. A lot of them actually have accelerated trends, as this one may, and changed actually power dynamics and given a thrust to rising powers or not, sometimes knock them off their peg. And in any case, that they tend to be big turning points. One of the issues with COVID is really that we don't know a lot about it, or We don't know the length this will go on. There's reports that we may have a seasonal lull during the summer months. It's unclear, obviously, about the death toll. We're unsure really to the degree to which this is going to affect the southern hemisphere. And now there are reports that you may not have immunity for more than a month or two for those who have gotten it. So you could have these cases of people maybe in the winter getting it again. So this makes it very hard to really predict how this crisis on COVID is going to evolve over the next year or two until we have a vaccine, which could be anywhere between a couple years and 4 years. Now, there's a huge dilemma that we're all facing, no matter what country you're in at this point, including the developing world, which has been hit with a financial crisis even before getting COVID. And that is, I mean, if you put in very strict measures, it's been seen in most cases that saves lives. But if you extend those measures too long, your economies can be throttled and you have serious political and social costs. So trying to modulate these two contradictory trends is really the predicament for governments and societies today. In the US case, we're facing untold unemployment levels. We haven't really seen these since the Great Depression. Hopefully it doesn't get up to 25%. But there are predictions, this one from Deutsche Bank, that US unemployment could remain as high as 9% by the end of 2021. For the US, that is a very high unemployment level. Obviously, getting out of the lockdown is going to be difficult. We're facing this in the US, also in European countries. The idea, I think, is that it will be a phased-in approach. So that complicates actually the economic recovery, but nevertheless can get us back up and running a little bit. It's not clear, as you see, there's no particular time when these phases will come in to play. It depends actually, again, going back to how degree to which we're able to really conquer the disease. Lots of predictions out there. They tend to be gloomier and gloomier. This was one that the Institute of International Finance put out the beginning of March. We had in recent days an IMF forecast, which is very similar to this forecast. And basically, despite the fact that this all began in China, nevertheless, the Western countries are going to be hit very hard. China will be a 1 or a 2% growth rate at the end of the year is really a hard landing. And there are lots of predictions where China actually goes into negative growth. Obviously, what we've seen is growing tensions between US and China. That's not very good for cooperation. There's an open question. Will we actually see what happened after the 2008 financial crisis when US and China, other countries in the G20 came together to cooperate on the recovery? That could still happen, particularly when we get into the phase where we're actually trying to dig ourselves out and get the economy up and running. Complicating all of this is the really collapse in the energy market and oil particularly. And this graph actually is out of date yesterday. The WTI went into negative territory. We're seeing that also affect the economic potential economic recovery, and for certain countries, Middle East, Africa, this is really dire news. And as I said, some of these countries really haven't been impacted yet by the virus, but nevertheless are being their whole economies are being turned upside down by the economic crisis. One of the big things, I mean, this is, again, there's no clear answer to it. There's some good news in what's happening. Emissions are way down. You all seen the pictures where you can actually see buildings in Beijing or in New Delhi or other capitals where there's usually smog. We've also seen news that China, other states are beginning to switch from coal to natural gas. That's very good news. But we're worried about what happens to green technology. Usually when fossil fuel prices go down, in this case, rock bottom, it tends to stop the transition to renewables. You have complications too because of the disruption in the supply chains. And this is what I mentioned. This is the really capital outflow. It happened. It's much greater than even in 2008, affecting, as I said, the developing world. And I would say the meetings last week in Washington here, the Bretton Woods institutions, were not necessarily that great of news. I mean, we expected there could have been much bigger help actually for the developing world. So I get here to the scenarios. First one is, that this is like other pandemics, you see the trends really accelerate. So we knew before this that there were divisions opening up between the West and China. In this case, we have a very difficult recovery time, despite the major fiscal and monetary efforts. And they're much greater in the U.S. and Europe, actually, than at this point in the crisis than they were in 2008. You've seen both the fiscal and on the monetary side. Nevertheless, it doesn't really help, in part because we really haven't conquered the disease. We don't have a vaccine very early. Unemployment remains high, and then you have the potential for social unrest. And this affects all of them. So they're in this scenario, there's very minimal cooperation at the beginning. Then you get the blame game, which we've already had. US remains wedded to America first. So in many ways, they want to go back to pushing China on lowering its subsidies for state-operated enterprises, so restructuring of the Chinese economy, putting tariffs on Chinese good. And we see a little bit of the replay of the 1930s here, with the potential at the end of growing conflict between the major powers. So what we've seen already, this increasing state-on-state competition gets even worse. Second scenario is one where China really spots a opportunity, particularly in the developing world, which is not getting the support it believes it should have from a US or Europe. China really pushes, it's not fully recovered, but it pushes nevertheless for increased assistance. We see expansion of the Belt and Road. The Communist Party at home, despite there's still hard, relatively difficult times, nevertheless, it can portray that the West has been weak in its recovery and with dealing with the COVID, boosting kind of Chinese pride and nationalism. And where that doesn't work, then you suppress very harshly criticism. In the US and Europe, you see this turning inward, increasing inward. You see today Trump thinking about closing immigration. Now you become a lot more protectionist. You have the racial bigotry against Asian Americans in the US and populism. And you also have a huge debt issue. So you actually begin the populism, instead of being more right-wing, turns more left-wing in this scenario. And you see the moves for wealth tax and higher income tax by all Western governments. And you finally see two, US and Europe, much more united. This may be a bit of a silver lining on an expansionist China. Okay, the final one. This is the good one. This is a replication of, in many ways, after the 2008 financial crisis. It's centered around trying to deal with the disease. So you have a coordinated effort by drug companies to find a vaccine. You have some guarantees that everybody in the world is going to get vaccinated. This leads really to an effort to try to eliminate this disease threat, and also to get governments, force governments to deal early with crises. So in this case, you get an effort to put together a warning agency, but one which actually has some heft with it. It can levy sanctions against governments which defy warnings. You have in the US, obviously, huge debate, somewhat along the lines of the League of Nations debate, where a lot of Americans see this as a step towards world government, but nevertheless is a slight majority to really join. EU is in favor, and China is forced because of the threat of sanctions and tariffs if it doesn't join. And it's also forced to clean up its disease cesspools. So this is the one where you actually get a step forward instead of in the other two some steps back. So I will finish now and take us out of the share screen, and we can continue the discussion.
Great, Matthew, thank you so much. And you've taken us to the future, and it was really inspiring and scary at the same time. I must say that really the first scenario, which I would characterize as the Great Depression 2.0, is the one I think everybody would basically build their walls up and try to build a future for themselves. Your number two was China first. Actually, this is a very interesting one. Is the number two economy. China would move in to seize the opportunity to, and this time, unite US and Europe. Still with populism and protectionism, obviously. And then the last one is probably my favorite, being an optimist. It's really going back to the pre-Trump US, which will lead not only EU, but also all the international platforms. So with that said, let's get started with our questions. And I would like to turn over to Ana Maria. Anna Maria, given the three scenarios Matt highlighted, obviously we may see different EU positioning. And I would like to start out about EU's response to coronavirus and the failure to agree on an EU fund with joint debt. Recently, you will all remember, President Macron said that this could be the end of Eurozone and also the European idea. So, and that EU was a political project where the human factor is the priority, and there are notions of solidarity that come into play. You will also remember the public health officials from Spain and Italy being angry and trying to take down the EU flags in their own countries. So how would that play out, Ana Maria?
Thank you very much. First, I would like really to congratulate Matthew for your amazing analysis. The uncertainty and unpredictability that you describe, I think is difficult not to share. On the scenarios, it might be too soon to say, since we are still in the middle of the crisis, both the sanitary crisis and the economic crisis, and we probably have not seen the worst of both. Concerning the scenarios, I would say that it's first, we're heading to the second scenario, but I think we'll end up in the third scenario. Let me explain why, and in the context of uncertainty and unpredictability. China is still, I think, in a phase of charm offensive. They have been, in my view, rightly blamed or accused or criticized for having suppressed information, and not only by the President of the United States. There is widespread evidence of this also in Europe. And therefore, they are giving masks with big PR. They're in a huge PR offensive, also with Africa, after what happened in Guangzhou, where they have been sort of treating some people coming from Africa in a discriminatory way. So I think they are not yet back in this aggressive, ruthless position on trade that we have seen previously. And also, I think although we know the kind of repression that there is in China, it's definitely not diminished with the coronavirus. On the contrary, we see that still there has been some internal, also in China, dissent, if one can use this word for China, on how the authorities have handled the virus. Coming to Europe, I belong to those that do not think that Europe has mishandled this crisis. I do not think that Europe has mishandled the crisis 2008 either, because Greece, at the end of the day, has been saved. Europe is born on the ashes of a war. Our line of business is managing crisis. We are good at crisis. And everyone, usually all the commentators, see that everything is collapsing and going down. It's the end of the euro, it's the end of Europe, but it's another exit from someone else. And true, I agree with also what Matthew said. There are more north and south tension. Believe me, being Italian, Swedish, Italian, I feel it in my blood. There are more east-west tensions. We see what is happening with Hungary, Poland, even Slovenia, taking advantage of this crisis to trash completely basic democratic rules and the rule of law and Article 2 of the Lisbon Treaty. But people have been seeing 60, 70 kilometers of trucks blocked at the border between Poland and Germany. They have seen Germany and France stopping the export of essential medical care like masks and ventilators. Yes, this is under everybody's eyes and what touches public opinion. But we also have Commission President von der Leyen, who said, we are all Italians. We have the several institutions of the European Union that, in my view, have reacted well, fast, and historically, they put together a package of measures that are unprecedented. Let me very, very quickly go through it just to launch the debate. Well, the European Central Bank. Yes, Madame Lagarde has been criticized for the so-called gaffe, but then look at the facts. The European Central Bank is allowing banks in Europe to block and suspend repayment of loans to companies. It's thanks to the European Central Bank. They are buying public bonds in the countries most affected. They are doing the whatever it takes, even if they didn't say it. Then you have the European Bank of Reconstruction, which put together a huge package. I don't want to adventure into figures because you always have someone that tells you, no, it's €1 more, it's €1 less. So it's huge package for investment and to support companies. Europe, for the first time, has suspended the Stability Pact, which means that the members of the Eurozone can spend in deficit as much as they want. Keynes would be glad about that, without even bumping into competition rules, which is a problem that we will have to address down the road. They have said that the structural funds can be used the way the countries want. It's like budgetary support. So it can be used for to strengthen the health systems, etc. And then they have said, the funds that you didn't use last year, in the case of Italy, it's like around 11 billion euro, you can use them anyway. Instead of going back to Brussels, you can use them. They have increased the Horizon 2020 budget for research, immediately available. I can continue forever, but one thing I would like to say, since I served in the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee for 10 years, the internal market, that's the key. Yes, at the beginning, member states have, in a clumsy way, reintroduced border controls. They have not closed the borders, reintroduced border controls. I think that's a natural reaction. But now we have seen that both the President of the European Commission and Commissioner Breton for the Internal Market are really working hard and have reacted to all countries, including Germany and France, to restore the single market. Is it working perfectly? No. Are member states all suddenly reinstored total free trade in Europe? No. But there are green lines that has been established where, according to the Commission, it should take maximum 15 minutes to pass a border for essential medical equipment. And there have been, I've been myself part of being in touch to Brussels, because Parma, my region where I am, the hospital desperately needed masks that were blocked in Germany by a company that produced from Sweden. I mean, the internal market is totally integrated. And I have seen that Brussels has reacted and the masks arrived. So I think that I would leave it here for now. Just a final comment. Yes, the European Union is always in crisis, the biggest scapegoat. National governments take credit. They have all a big crisis in their hands. No one knows how to handle it. There is this very difficult balancing act that you, Matthew, were talking about so well, between how much do we risk people's lives by reopening the economy? How much do we risk the economy, poverty, unemployment by keeping the lockdown prolonged? And since it's a new virus, no one has really the answer. As long as we don't have a vaccine, as long as we don't have medicines that are effective, we all know, according to what the experts tell us, that we cannot reopen everything as normal. Big scapegoat, but also I think we have learned that you cannot give Europe for granted. When the internal market doesn't work, everyone loses, and we cannot save ourselves together. Alone, sorry. We need to save ourselves together. Thank you.
Anna Maria, thank you so much. Let me step in, and because you really, opened up on the EU front so well, so I really want to stay on the EU a bit more, if I may. And and again, this question is to you. Under Matt's first scenario, I mean, which you already touched base a few, but in which global recovery is slow and challenging, and the countries in the EU blame each other for lack of solidarity sometimes, even though you said that EU has found a solution and was helpful in the end. And would we see new realities after how hard Italy and Spain were hit by this crisis? The crisis erected invisible walls as well between countries, and the free movement of people and goods, as you already touched base, has been almost halted, just occasionally. In the meantime, countries have intervened on others' medical equipment, as you just said. We saw such cases in Europe, just as you very well underlined. History also has shown us that after large economic and social crises, like this, populists and nationalists have also emerged as winners. Do you believe populism will be bolstered as a result of this crisis? And also, there will be a EU summit on Thursday, and this will be very crucial, I think, moving forward. could you also touch base on the importance of this EU summit ahead, and if you can just summarize quickly? Thank you so much. I know I asked many questions, but so many to discuss. Thank you.
Very important question, Daphne. Well, on the political consequences, we are in a phase in Europe. We're in a phase where fear and concern is driving people's reaction. And we see almost everywhere in Europe that the leaders that are in power are the ones who are getting popularity. All of them. I mean, you have the rates of, for Sebastian Kurz, 70%. Macron, who was dealing yesterday with a yellow vest, now suddenly 70%. And I'm not saying Orban, I'm saying the real functioning democracies of Europe. Germany, Angela Merkel and CDU, they got adrenaline and breathing space, and suddenly she's again the big leader. So I think that that's unavoidable, because you look for reassurance, you want to be protected, you don't want to further destabilize where everything around you is uncertain. But after this crisis, the health crisis, I'm not talking about the economic crisis, people will ask accounts. Did you really handle it well? Could we have had less people died? And so on and so forth. At the moment, the populist and nationalist party, in my view, for what I see, are somehow restrained. Why? Two reasons. One, migration is not anymore the top on the agenda. So they lost the key issue on which they were driving since 2015. The second is that it doesn't look nice in public opinion when you hammer down, protest, criticize, take the tough debate, the ideological political debate at the time that everyone wants national unity, we're in it together, we will make it. And this is the line, at least in Europe, that people feel. So I see that Salvini in Italy is still at 30%, but even him has lost 4%. And I think that's the most dangerous populist we have in Europe at the moment. I'm following fairly closely the dramatic situation in Italy. So we might see a situation like we had after the big crisis in 29 and First World War in Germany, that, the dramatic economic situation is causing populists to go to power. Too soon to say. We have to see how much this package of economic help will be able to do damage control in terms of mass unemployment and poverty. I think the economic crisis and the populist rise are going to go hand in hand. On the summit, very quickly, that's why it's a crucial, essential, historical summit. They are going to discuss the measures that the Euro group, the financial ministers, have been adopting last week. Quickly, what is it? Well, as I was saying before, you have more or less 200,000 billion of the European Bank of Reconstruction. You have the so-called SURE, which is more or less 100 billion on unemployment, supporting member states on unemployment, unprecedented. And then you have the famous recovery fund, which is going to be possibility to basically buy share guaranteed by the European Union, and the stability mechanism, which is already funded. And I hope that they will not again get into the nightmare of the Euro bonds, because we need instruments that are ready now to use. And believe me, I know how much it took to us, 2012, to put up the stability mechanism, several years. Any new mechanism takes years to be put up. That's in the democratic nature of European Union decision-making. We need to use the instruments that are available now, and that's the stability mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Marie. This is very interesting. And from there, maybe if you can also touch base a bit, how this will have an impact on the transatlantic relationship between EU and US. What's your expectations, and under which scenarios will that this relationship can land?
Well, as Matthew very well said, we are in an American first situation, and everyone on its own. There's a huge difference between the economic crisis 2008. Europe does not have a partner. we still believe that American people are our friends and our allies, and we look forward to restore full transatlantic relationship. I think that's a lot of people think like this in Europe, definitely the European Union institutions. But at the moment, I don't think that I know that since the beginning of the crisis, the COVID crisis, there has been high-level talks between the White House and leaders in Europe, not at my knowledge. The scientific community, the medical community is working together more than ever, but that's private. I think that what really is going to determine the relationship between Europe and the United States is the outcome of the elections in November, more than the COVID. At the moment, I would say everything is frozen. Trade relationships are frozen to this kind of ceasefire, and security relations also.
Thank you, Anna Maria. Just from there, I mean, we can go on only and stick with the EU, but I want to turn now to Matt again, and to his wonderful presentation. Matt, before coming to my question, my eyes just caught an interesting question, and it will be a short one, which is actually coming from Canada. Can Matt provide probabilities to his scenarios? He's asking. Can we start with that, and I'll continue with my question?
Sure.
Can you assign any probability?
Sure. You're actually not supposed to do that for scenarios, because once you begin attaching probabilities, then you ignore scenarios, which over time actually may be the actual future. But I'll give you my idea where we're presently on the path. I think it is on the number one. I think we're all sinking. And as Anna Maria just said, I mean, you have the U.S. being this America first, so they don't want to actually get this decision last week. U.S. is holding up the SDRs for the developing world. It's all inward, and you don't have that G20 activism that you did after the 2008 financial crisis. I don't know. We really don't know what China intends to do. They haven't offered a big fiscal monetary package like they did after the financial crisis. And there's a lot of speculation that their debt levels are so high that it's going to make it difficult for them. But I have a notion, I mean, once we have a better gauge on just how hurt they are, their economy, I think they'll probably have to do something if they really can't get the recovery going, and it's going to be difficult when their trading partners are really sunk in to this recession. So, that's a question mark. It's really not clear what their strategy is. And I think we haven't gotten to the hopeful scenario yet. But, one of the key aspects of this is if we really, none of us separately can get a handle on the disease itself, then I could see that as much more the centerpiece. It's similar to, Europe after the end of the Second World War is the coal and steel community, where basically that becomes the motor for enlarging the cooperation and getting multilateralism going. I would agree totally with Anna Maria that I don't see the Trump administration being able to make that jump to multilateralism. Trump does a lot of U-turns and has done over the last 3 or 4 years, but that one is really a bridge too far. So I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. Thanks, Matt. And I think we can agree that the third scenario you just outlined, one of enhanced global cooperation and easing of tensions between East and West, would be the most preferred outcome.
Sure.
What steps should the global community be taking to achieve this outcome, and what is being done? What should be done more? Is there a role also for NGOs and think tanks such as the Atlantic Council to play?
Is that to me or to?
No, to you, Matt.
Okay. I do think that there is a huge role for NGOs, Atlantic Council, others. I mean, one thing is that we can, we are in this pivotal year where we have an election. Later in the year, think tanks are the place where we should actually be developing new policies and to help the next administration. I don't think at this point that Biden has really thought beyond how to get Trump out of the White House. And in that sense, I think, I don't think going back to a playbook when he was in office under Obama, it's not that relevant. I think he would have the right instincts as far as multilateralism, but that's where think tanks and other institutions can really formulate somewhat along the lines maybe that the US did after the Second World War of trying to rebuild this multilateral edifice, which has really been fraying for the last decade or two. So I think that's a key area that we can actually work on. I think one of the issues will be also on the COVID. I mean, a lot of people are in the medical community are very pessimistic that we can actually get to a vaccine in 2 years, or it's going to take a lot longer. And there's the issue, which I didn't raise, of mutations coming along, making it also much more difficult. So I think that can be, as I said before, a motor really for a lot more cooperation. And you do have the scientific community very much working together. And you have the financial community out of the Fed really working together. And they've taken a very activist role. So in some ways that offsets a little bit the lack of cooperation shown by the White House.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Hakan?
Okay, Matt, I would like, actually, you sort of touched on this, but maybe I want to hear the answers from now the perspective of the public opinion, both at the national and international level. Are there any early indications as to people will want more global cooperation, or they would want to follow their leaders towards more protectionism and nationalism?
I have not seen any indication in the surveys that there is a great move towards multilateralism, but that initially Trump was going up, and now there seems to be actually growing irritation and opposition to him. And I would say that we're back to the divisions that we held. We had briefly had some consensus even in Congress, but we're back to this division of at least 1/3 very much in his camp. And those are the ones out in the street at the moment and wanting to reopen the economy. But you have, 2/3, and a lot of the polls show that, the public is very, like 2/3 of the public, very worried about reopening too soon. So are really opposed to, the Trump message at this point. I'm hoping that that also can move towards more cooperation, but you also have very high levels of hostility towards China. And that's going to make it, because obviously there's, they're pointing to it, blaming it. There are lots of conspiracy theories out there at the moment about this was manufactured in a lab outside of Wuhan, purposely to bring down the West. And, what you saw in US public opinion, even before this crisis, was growing hostility towards China. So I see that as a problem, not so much for the transatlantic relationship, because actually the polls before this crisis have shown, Americans' opinion of Europe actually going up, but I see it much more on the problem of the Sino-U.S. relationship.
Let's stay on the China-U.S. relationship, and let's also add Russia to the mix just to stir things up a little bit. Do you think that this new normal would lead to a new kind of Cold War? And then do you see as a result China and U.S. being able to co-lead the world? Obviously, one would need to assume that Biden probably would be in the White House.
I see, under Biden, perhaps a way that we rebuild, some of the cooperation with China. But he will have a difficult road. Even at the end of the Obama administration, you had people that really see China as the peer competitor. But I think he can be in a better position. There will be groups in the business world who will, were hurt by the tariffs, will want, so long as you can get greater access, market access in China and other things, that you could actually rebuild some of the support in the business world, because the business world is not that enthusiastic about decoupling. And so that could be a base, actually, and it would be a switch, because the business world tends to be much more leaning Republican, I would say, although not necessarily Trump. So that could be a way that you could rebuild it, but you have enormous hostility in the Congress. And so I see that as a big problem. I do think that there will be some urgency at some point that, we need to get all the big economic drivers together to think about how you recover. I don't know. I don't think that will be successful, getting that cooperation going under Trump, but I think a Biden maybe could get that going. And China will have an incentive as well, because they need the external markets.
Right. Fascinating. Let's stay on this topic because under the new paradigm that you've portrayed for global affairs, where do you see institutions such as United Nations, and are they well equipped to handle such new paradigm?
Well, I think, there's a debate going on in this country, the U.S., on the WHO, one of the agencies in the UN. I think, we really need to go back and look at the origins of the crisis and how different measures actually were effective or not. And in that sense, the WHO needs to change, its advice. I mean, it talked about, quarantines originally. Obviously, governments went in a different direction, and it seems to be that, that very severe lockdown actually, was effective, at least in bringing down the number of cases, and even, this leveling out the curve. Now, I'd love to hear from Anna Maria, because she's in Sweden, so they took a different approach on that. But nevertheless, most of the world actually disregarded, and even the WHO has kind of walked away from its original advice. So some of that has to be redone and revised. And then I think the UN, they've had some problems rebuilding support in places like the US. Their standing has gone down, and that's a long running trend. So if they can, rebuild the WHO, and I think this could happen under a Biden administration, where we really begin to think about health as an issue, just like we do WMD or some other things that has to be a priority for countries. And then I think you could see the UN actually, its standing and its institutions actually go up.
Thank you, Matt. Just we have so many questions also flowing here. Just one of the questions is asking whether Turkey is in the middle of some ways between East, West, Europe, China. What will be the impact there? So no worries. Actually, now we are moving a bit to Turkey, and right now I will be adding just 15 more minutes because we have so many. The answers are interesting. Questions are good. So I really want to spare time to Q&A. Anna Maria, now my question to you. You were also the member of the EU-Turkey Joint Parliamentary Commission. And how do you think COVID-19 can impact the EU-Turkey dialogue and relationship, depending on whether people will want more global cooperation or whether they will desire to protect their national self-interest moving forward under various scenarios?
Well, as you know, Daphne, I have been a great supporter of Turkey becoming a member of the European Union, even if at the moment is out of the table. I think that Turkey is and has to continue to be a key partner and is a key player for the European Union. At the moment, we have an almost frozen situation where the dialogue has been restarted, but it's a dialogue in which we agree to disagree. As you know, President Erdogan was in Brussels a couple of weeks ago, which is good, but they agreed to disagree. There is the issue of, as you know, repression, going far away from the rule of law, human rights issue, where the assessment of the European Union is that it's not going back to, it's actually going worse. You see that even people that criticize or have things to say about the way COVID is being handled are being somehow suppressed and repressed. Then they are opening some prisons because they need to do it for health reasons. I hope they will include in that also the political prisoners and the prisoners of academics, media, and so on. Then there is the migration part, where, as you know, Erdogan has been playing a dirty game towards Europe because there has been busing young boys from Afghanistan to the border of Turkey to Greece and saying, go to Europe, the way is open. By telling the people of Turkey and the people of the world that was spontaneous and where they couldn't stop it, etc., etc. So I think this game has not succeeded, and I'm very sorry for the migrants that were used on that, but I think Europe could not accept this way of handling things. The COVID is making things worse because it adds to the tension. The migration for the populist party in Europe is very easy to say, not only we don't want the migrants, but they are bringing the virus. And that argument is very unfortunately used by the populist parties. So I don't see light in the tunnel in EU-Turkey relationship at the moment. And I don't even mention the issue of Cyprus and the drilling.
This is, of course, a different topic of discussion, and for a different panel, which we can spend hours. And thank you, Anna Maria. And I know that you have been outlining all these as a true friend of Turkey. But on the other hand, as we also discussed many times in the past, it is a two-sided relationship, like any relationship. And according to me, COVID-19 showed everybody that actually the world is a big village. And everybody needs each other. And actually, I also personally see the cooperation and solidarity, and also the cooperation, especially on COVID, being transparent, and also, just it's similar to the, cooperation on, for example, terrorism as well. which Turkey has been complaining a lot, just in the past about that, and still is, just so, because you cannot combat terrorism unless all sides act together. This is the same as the COVID. It is actually the different concept, but actually the same mentality. So, just wanted to make one point, but that's true that all sides have a lesson to take out of this crisis, and I do hope that we all have to, unfortunately, step backwards, maybe 2 or 3 steps backwards, so that we can actually continue our future progress at all sides. That's what I think.
No, you're totally right, Daphne. I agree. We are in it together.
Yeah, thank you. And so while saying that, maybe we can stick with the Turkey side, Hakan, before just moving on to Q&A. So do you want? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, why don't I turn the table around and ask you a question, because you've been doing all the asking lately. Okay, so in one of Matthew's scenarios, we've talked about the increasing tensions between US and Russia and China. So as we all know, Turkey has acted very carefully to balance its strategic interests, while also being an active member of NATO alliance. Do you see Turkey still managing this diplomatic sort of balance going forward in this post-COVID environment?
Hakan, you caught me unprepared, but let me not fair, but let me say a few things very quickly, because we really need to spend time for the Q&A. I think Turkey needs to stick with its diversification policy, and because of its geography, with Russia on the north, and Iran on the east, and the Middle East countries, other trouble, just at the southeast. It is not a very easy geography that Turkey is living in, and not in the history, not now. For this reason, and also for neighboring relationship, Turkey needs to be, diversify its risks, and also, and continue with its relationship with all sides. And while saying that, I am a true believer of the EU story. Anna Maria knows that well. Turkey needs to stick its face to the West, and stay with the, stick with the norms of the, EU, and continue its path where it is now, and towards a, just more developed country, as also a member of the G20 itself. So that's where I have to leave that now. And then, if it is the case, then I'll have a question for you, if it is okay.
I asked for it.
Emerging markets are projected to be among those hardest hit by the virus. Is Turkey prepared for a scenario of slow and challenging global economic recovery, as projected in Matt's first scenario, you think? How would this affect Turkey geopolitically and strategically? There you go.
This is the easiest one. Well, just like any virus attacking the human body, if you have a strong immune system, obviously that better prepares you for the virus. And prior to COVID-19, obviously Turkey had long-standing structural challenges with its economy, and also given the relations with EU, and even at times with US, we've had also geopolitical challenges. I do hope that whatever the scenario will play out, but in the case of number one, which is the Great Depression 2.0, I think that this could inevitably push Turkey towards, again, its route with US and EU, because in many ways, Ankara is very pragmatic. And going forward, the geopolitical interests after a COVID-19 sort of world would have to start with social and economic sort of stability. And any numbers that I'm looking at, from the unemployment, from the recession, as well as the inflation, Turkey would need to welcome that. But having said that, obviously, we would also see Turkey trying to become more sort of self-sufficient, in the sense that they would probably go after sort of national medical infrastructure and industries. They will likely take on a national agriculture sort of initiative, in addition to really trying to better integrate with EU to take advantage of the global supply chains being defragmented, and potentially trying to capture some of it within Turkey. Because Turkey is a sort of a young demographics country, I would say that it should be able to do that. But my scenario for Turkey would be more like a wheelbarrow scenario, and how quickly that it can turn into a euro is a question of how quickly they will realize the pragmatism and the future really should lie with EU and US.
Hakan, thank you. I'm releasing you now, so that you can, for the time being, just, and I would like to move on to our Q&A, just quickly. And let me remind you that if you have a question, please type on the chat box with your name and affiliation. And we have several questions. I'd like to start with, okay. To all panelists from Turkey, this is coming from Mr. Uludağ. How can post-COVID period affect China-centric globalization all over the world? And what would be the potential impacts on the balance between production and consumption among countries? So in a way, referring at the supply chain. Matt, would you like to take on this question?
Okay, so what has been happening even before this crisis is much more regionalization of supply chains. So there has been some what we call reshoring of manufacturing, and also where it isn't actual reshoring, it's coming back to Mexico or whatever. So I think you could see, I wouldn't say globalization, but a much more regionalization of the supply chains. And in certain cases, like medical supplies, I think in Europe and in the US, there's going to be a move really to get those reshored. So back much more in the US, or maybe among the Canada, US, or Mexico, in that area, so that instead of having to rely on like 90% of our medical pharmacy inputs from China, it's much more reliable to have the production inside that area. Hopefully, and this is the real problem, hopefully that doesn't cut off the scientific exchanges, which are very important for advances in medicine and other areas, and also the university exchanges, which I think actually it's something people are not talking about so much at the moment, but if that could be a tertiary effect if we have fewer international students and we have foreign universities cut off from their counterparts elsewhere, that could also undermine actually the advances in a number of areas on technology. So get back to the answer. I don't see a China-centric globalization. I do see China a very important player. And as I pointed out in the second scenario, I think you could have it in the Belt and Road that would expand in more the developing world. But I see actually among the two other economic drivers in the world, U.S. and Europe, a pushback against China.
Thank you, Matt. There are actually, let me repeat, several questions about this. Actually, you with this question, I think touch base on all. Now, I have a question for Ana Maria here. Just from one of our from Romania, one of our audience. Ana Maria, thank you. How do you think the rejection of Corona bonds may have an impact on EU solidarity, despite the help packages you have just mentioned?
Thank you. It's a very relevant question, especially for Italy, because there has been this kind of, in my view, misunderstanding. European solidarity equal Eurobonds. It's not like this. Eurobonds are not available. I'm in favor of Eurobonds, but they're not available. And there is not a majority to have them among the member states at the moment. So there has been European solidarity. We have seen it in an historic, amazing way by the package of financial measures that the different economic measures that the different institutions have put forward very fast. Of course, let's see what's happened at the summit on Thursday, the 23rd of April. If everything is going to be really agreed, they're talking about 1,500 billions of euros for the recovery fund. If this is going to be going forward, and the second thing is the budget of the European Union, which is now the big, as every time we renew the multi-annual financial budget for 7 years, it's the big fights among member states, especially now after Brexit. If they will be able to increase the budget and to take the COVID package from the common budget, that which is what like Renew Europe, Macron, and a lot of the pro-Europeans would like to see, then that's going to be a very, very significant step forward in increasing solidarity institutionally. Can I say just one thing on Italy? Because I'm very worried about what's going to happen if Italy goes to Brussels with a position where one party in the government wants the Eurobonds, another one wants the stability mechanism, the other one doesn't want the stability mechanism, and the opposition, some are in favor of the stability mechanism, and the other part of the opposition is in favor of the Eurobonds. So no one in Italy would be able to tell you exactly what the Eurobonds are if you ask people in the street, but everyone wants the Eurobonds. So since in my assessment, the Eurobonds, as it's called, the COVID bonds, are not going to come, but there is a mutualization of the debt already, because the package is a mutualization of the debt. It's a matter of how you present it to public opinion. I am afraid there's going to be a wave of anti-Europeanism that we have never seen in Italy before. There's going to be a part of the Italian political system, Cinque Stelle, that is already in the lap of China. Some of them are saying, let's leave the euro. We have China, and we have built so many good relationships with China, welcoming them when they come with the planes, giving the masks to Italy. Then it turned out that the masks are not even up to the European standards, etc., by the foreign minister. So the instability that Matthew was talking about in one of his scenarios, I think if any country is risking that is Italy.
Okay, thank you, Ana Maria. And Hakan, I will just ask this question to you from, again, one of our audience, on Turkey. This is coming from, I believe, from Dake, actually, just from Istanbul. Would it be possible to see more trade and investment integration with Turkey? Referring at US and EU. In that sense, how would you foresee the progress in updating the customs union agreement with Turkey? Do you expect structural economic changes to take place as many countries as in Europe and in the countries like Turkey? So can you comment on this?
Sure. I think this being a health crisis, all that scenario will depend upon how quickly we will have a cure and a vaccine that the world will use. And because I think it's given that if the last scenario that Matthew laid out plays out, obviously we will see a faster recovery going back to our new normal. I don't want to say normal because it will never be the same. And so I think the longer the recovery, the health recovery takes place, the more Turkey could suffer socially and economically. And therefore, already Turkey having almost half of its exports from EU under the umbrella of the customs union, as well as 2/3 of the FDI from EU, it's just a reflex. It's inevitable that Turkey would have to go back to EU. I'm afraid that based on everything that I heard from our panelists, especially Anna Maria, Ankara would need to do a lot of convincing and a lot of sort of advocacy as well as relationship rebuilding to be able to go back to that ideal scenario. And because of the structural problems that we've had, and because of the $100 billion plus capital outflows from the emerging economies in the first 3 months of 2020, including Turkey, I'm afraid Turkey's options would be very limited. So again, sometimes survival, crisis create really great solutions and great sort of outcomes. I do hope that Turkey will literally turn this crisis into an opportunity to go back to its roots.
Thanks, Hakan. Thank you so much. I mean, there are so many questions, but we also need to close up, and I really hate to close up. But one thing that I really want to say to the audience is that we will share all these questions, and they are also seeing, just our panelists, and we will try to address it as much as we can also later on, but to close up, I'd like to turn back again to Matthew, to his 3 scenarios. Matthew, let's hope that, your most optimistic scenario will come out and we will be, enjoying some V-shaped recovery globally. But honestly, I cannot be that optimistic. I think I will be more for a U-shape instead of V-shape, given the situation right now. But just one last question. This is which I think I have to, because it's very interesting. I really like to ask this one. If you can just give me 1 second. Yeah, this is coming from actually. From Dimitros. He is a professor in Kadir Has University. To Anna Maria. Is EU prepared to deal with the migration pressures that will emerge, compounding the current COVID trends, as both are disproportionately affecting EU's Mediterranean region?
Well, the crisis and the challenges that we were dealing before didn't disappear with the crisis of COVID, even if we talk less about them. And I think that there is a fundamental, there is a difference between EU institutions and the member states. EU institutions, including the European Parliament, we have voted a comprehensive package of revising the migration and refugee tools of the European Union that, in my view, were very good. They were shot down by a few member states, including Hungary, in the Council. That's why it could never see life. So that's a real problem of veto right into the European institutions. And if this crisis is going to, and it's too soon to say, is going to bring a further integration of the European Union down the line, maybe not immediately, so that we solve this problem of intergovernmental cooperation instead of community method, where governments can still stop on key issues to go forward. There is obvious that EU and Turkey will have to find a way to cooperate on the refugee issue, because really there we are in it together. I thought that the statement or agreement that we had was a good basis, and it could be revived when the relationship will be unfrozen. The issue of people still dying in the Mediterranean, which is still one of the biggest graveyards in the world, is continues to be very actual now. And there, unfortunately, when Salvini was Minister of Interior in Italy, he has not made things easier. And I hope that the various operations of the European Union in the Mediterranean can restart fast and well, because there's still a need to save lives there.
Thank you, Anna Maria. And one last question, which I cannot, I need to face this temptation. Given Matt scenario 1, does nuclear proliferation become more likely as a multilateral security arrangement as compromised and countries go their own way in seeking security? This comes from Bob. He is a senior policy advisor at National Nuclear Security Administration. Matt.
I don't think it's an automatic result of particularly the scenario 1 in which we're all going our own way. I see it, as could happen anyway, given the U.S. Iranian ties really going down or so fast. I mean, I think this is an area where if that nuclear agreement breaks down, Europe can't actually move in to sway either a second Trump administration or a Biden administration to revive that agreement. Then I think you could see a huge blow to the non-proliferation regime. And that kind of opens the door to other states, particularly in the Middle East Gulf area, thinking about nuclear programs. And the other issue would be if you really had a very isolationist US who pulled back from Asia, and I don't really see this happening necessarily under any of these scenarios, then you could have Asian countries, particularly Japan and others, thinking about how do they protect against China. So I don't think it's an automatic result. It could be, as we play out that scenario 1 over a decade or 2, that you would see the breakdown of all these international accords, and that would be one of them. And you really have a number of countries trying to protect themselves because they don't see the U.S. as helping them, that you would actually see the breakdown of that regime.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, we need to close up. We are already, it's almost 6:20. And I would like to start thanking, first of all, our wonderful panelists. Matt, thank you. Anna Maria, thank you. Hakan, thank you for also co-moderating with me. It's wonderful to have you here, all of you, and with your very interesting, analysis and comments. And also, I'd like to thank our audience as well for their interesting questions and active participation. Please follow us on our webpage. We will try to address as much as answers to all these questions. They are moving forward, in the coming weeks. So I don't want anyone remaining unanswered. And also I'd like to thank
you, Daphne.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So until next time, just next week on end of the month, we have another important event. Please follow us on Twitter and also on our webpage. And thank you again for joining us today. And I'd like to thank also my team, Pınar, Grady, and the whole communications and events team from Washington, D.C. for making this event to happen. And thank you again for joining. Thank you so much. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay healthy. Thank you.
Take care. Keep safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Bye.
Thank you, Matt. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.